Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Whosoever Group podcast. I'm your host, The Happy Crow, and today with me is...
Storm Whistler.
So how are you guys doing? We're doing good. We have part 2 of our 2-part series. Amazing how that works. Of David's great and terrible life.
You can count 1, 2. What's after 2?
It's the same code as on my luggage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know. So that is there we go. Try that again. So let's get on with what happened with David. And by the way, we had definitely more viewership, so thank you guys for that. And keep tuning in. Tell people. Part 2, David's great and terrible life. Where did we leave off with last week, Mr. Storm?
Where did we leave off? That is a great question. Drawing a blank at this moment. Let's see. Oh, Saul died.
There we go.
That's exactly where we left off.
Saul died. David wrote a beautiful tribute to Saul and his brother Jonathan, and then he was living in a city. Then here's the crazy part. So right after this happens, after some time had passed, David goes to God like, okay, is it time now? Like he still was not like, is this okay? He was not like, once again, as for me, if this was me, I would like, we're ready. He's going. I'm in. I would have ran into there, guns blazing. But no, that's not what happened. He was still very cautious, still praying about it, still saying, okay, God, is this what you want from me? This happened, and then God said, yep, go up. He was anointed king of Judah, and all the quick lesson, 12 tribes. Judah was separate from those tribes, one of the larger tribes, and it was also the priestly tribe, and also the tribe from where Jesus came through the bloodline of David. So, quick lesson there. But he was anointed king there and over some other cities that were there. So after he got that, now you would think then the rest of Israel would follow, but no. Now in comes Abner.
Before we get to Abner,
oh boy,
I'm going to point out something out when I was reading this. So David hears that Saul's dead from this guy.
That's okay. I know where you're going with this. Yep.
And then in the description of him saying that Saul died, he actually says that he killed Saul. Not from what we heard from the last book, that he killed himself.
Yeah, so pretty much this guy obviously did not know David very well. He did not understand David's loyalty. He did not understand his heart. He did not understand what had happened previously to people who tried to say, oh, look what I did. So he goes, okay, this is what happened. You're telling me you killed David? I mean, Saul, you killed him? What gave you the right to do that? And you're dead.
Pretty much.
So
even after death,
still loyal to the family.
David's still loyal to the family.
Yep. And then that once again speaks to his character because I
wanted to point that out. I thought that was very interesting.
I can understand being loyal in life, but once the guy's gone, at what point is it like, I think, I'm not worried about it no more. I totally understand Jonathan because that was his friend. As for Saul, well, he had it coming. But no, that was not David's heart, and that's amazing that wasn't his heart. But, so next we're going to come to Abner. He was the leader of the Israelite army, and Joab, which was David's nephew, if I'm remembering correctly.
I can't remember.
Okay, we'll go with nephew. If we're wrong, yell at us in comments, or just please comment. Anyway, so Abner and Joab, they were both leaders of the military. As they were leaders of the military, they both had very strategic minds, and they were both very cunning and shrewd.
Nephew is correct.
Sorry. All right, there we go. Look at live fact checks. Oh yeah. So they were both as they're very cunning and shrewd, but also Abner was also very loyal to Saul, same as Joab was very loyal to David. Abner was the one who put in the king's son, Saul's son, into power over Israel. And the way I read it, it almost sounds like this was 100% Abner just going, "Let's do this." And it doesn't sound, because the way the King Saul's son, and by the way, what was his name?
Ishbosheth.
How should be?
Ishbosheth. Gotcha.
So yeah,
Ishbosheth.
so I'm stealing this one from a comedian. It says, "Why do all these Bible names sound like they were named during a sneeze? Like you had like little
Ishbosheth.
yeah, little monk like, oh look how beautiful he is, and I will name him." Oh, I guess that's what we're going with. Okay, so
Yep.
Ishbosheth, or whatever you want to call him. I know there's probably some real deep meaning behind a lot of these names.
Probably.
That's more than we're getting into today. So if you want to know more about it, you look it up for yourself. We're only giving you a little taste. Dive into the Bible for yourselves, ladies and gents.
Or just Google it.
You just gave people an excuse not to read the Bible. I think you need to repent, sir. I need some holy water, an old priest and a young priest. Anyway, so Abner just threw him in there, and from the way the description is, it sounds like he had no desire to, was not like, this is what I need to do. It was more of, oh, you want me? Okay. He did not seem like the most forthright person. And then you have the fights between the house of Saul and the house of David. They go back and forth. Now, Abner eventually in battle tried to do the honorable thing. They was fighting. Now he respected Joab, commander of David's army. He goes, I don't want to kill it was his brother or cousin. I think it was his brother. Joab's brother. He did not want to kill him. He had no desire to kill him because he did not want to create an issue between, that. There's already family issues between, Saul's house and David's house.
Yes,
so
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
he's not trying to make more like, if they're going to fight, it was going to be, the nameless peons in the army, not, actual known people. So he kept telling them in battle, like, pretty much saying, "Get away from here, little boy. I don't want to hurt you. I'm not trying to hurt you. Get away." And it didn't work out. Well, he wouldn't let up, and so at that point, Abner's like, "Okay, it's either you or me." So he shoves his spear through his chest, and at that point, then Joab goes, "You're dead." And he never let it go, which understandably so, but blood begets blood, and then it just goes in a never-ending spiral. So, and that never-ending spiral ends pretty horrendously for both parties, which we'll get into later. But so that blood feud just went back and forth for a while, but then there was a small moment of like, okay, because David brought over Abner, because Ishbosheth, I really want to figure out like a funny nickname for him, but I can't think of one on the top of my head. Like, I don't know.
Well, you're missing the time too. So
yeah, I know.
Might as well just go on.
No, man, you heard him yelling at me. So he accused Abner of something, and so he's like, you know what? No, forget you. I've been loyal to you this whole time. So to me, it really seems like Abner was the king of Israel at that point, like doing everything from the background.
Yeah. He's the Palpatine.
Yeah, there you go.
Except for he wasn't on both sides, so I guess that doesn't work.
Palpatine wasn't on both sides.
Yes, he was.
He was playing a role in the Senate. He wasn't like part of the Jedi.
No, but he was playing the role in the Jedi's kind of were at the bidding of the Senate. I wouldn't say completely.
Well, that's because they failed.
And then he was also the Sith. So how was he not playing? He was the one major player that knew everything.
Yeah, but like when I hear play sides, I'm thinking like the good versus the evil. Like the Senate was kind of just the idiots in the middle. They were not like one or the other. They were just there.
Pretty sure they're the ones who paid for the Clone Wars and
yeah, because of deceit the whole way around. But that's politics.
And who was the deceiver?
Politics. That's what it was.
Yeah, you're just trying to not.
You know what? I'm looking for a new co-host.
Fine, I'm done. See ya.
As he walks out the door. No, come back. So he just says, forget you, goes over to David and says, okay, here, I'm going to pretty much hand everything over to you. I do find it very interesting that he like legit says, I'm going to give you the kingdom. Almost like, oh, he was in charge once again. So
Well, he was also the one who named Ishbosheth, the king of Israel.
yep, that's what he named Shlabalaba, the king. That's my nickname for him, Shlabalaba. But so as that happened, he left. Joab came in, so there's that like brief moment of like nobody's killing each other. Okay, this might be okay. And then once Joab found out, he wasn't happy. He said, "Okay, you let him here. He killed my brother, and you let him here, and you didn't do nothing about it." Meanwhile, David's in the middle, like going, "Okay, I know what you're saying, but I'm trying to resolve this peacefully. I'm not trying to create an even worse situation." So in all reality, David's doing the diplomatic thing, but that's not what worked out because then Joab. Oh, go ahead.
Which I find kind of interesting that he's, now playing the diplomat when for pretty much all we've known him to do is fight battles.
Yes, but ones that were not necessarily under his control.
I understand,
He was
but
he was never like the aggressor. He was
the conqueror, though.
He was he was good at what he did, but he wasn't like the one going out and picking the battles.
I'm just saying this is a new role that we're seeing David being put in.
Yeah, put into the. But I also think it has a bit to do with his respect too, because like he didn't want. I'm going to assume the way it reads, it's almost like it wasn't going to be like a bloody transfer. It was just going to be like a peaceful transfer. So like, okay, I can still preserve his house. I can still help this out and not have to have any more issues. Because it doesn't say like I'm going to take him out for you. It says I'm going to transfer it to you. That it seems more still in line with his virtue. It's not completely off the rails. But yes, it is a new role for him also to be doing the balancing act because he's never really done a balancing act before. But when he finally did do the balancing act, Joab had to go mess it up. He went in, and then he called in Abner and stabbed him to death in a nice little dark room. David was not happy. He cursed Joab's family and said that this one's interesting. There's going to be no one in your family without a gimp, a sore,
or leprosy.
Yes, or leprosy, or someone dying, or the sword will never leave your house, meaning that people are always going to be fighting. There's always going to be turmoil in your household.
Basically just cursed him.
Yeah, that's like whew. So obviously he was truly trying for a peaceful transition. He did not want insanity. So after this happened, then two of the kings of Israel, they killed him in his sleep, cut off his head, took the head back, and said, "Hey, look what we did. We got you." Once again, obviously they do not know who he is. He said, "How dare you touch a king? How dare you?" And then they were killed. So once again, goes right back to that loyalty and respect. You don't cross certain lines with him. He was that guy like. Remember? Have you ever watched the Rambo movies?
It's been a really long time. I've probably seen one or two of them.
I kind of think of him like that a bit. Like he's this guy who he's seen a lot and he can deal with a lot, but he has certain things like you don't cross that line. That's as far as you go, no further. I can deal with a lot, but once you cross the line, it's over. And that seems like
I feel like it's a more recent movie, kind of like John Wick and the puppy.
I think
you touch the puppy and the car.
I really don't think that. I think the puppy was a part of it. I think that was just his grief over his wife, and then that.
Oh, for sure.
The puppy was kind of just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well, yeah. Besides the point. Moving on.
Aren't they making a fourth one soon?
Yes.
I can't wait for it. It's gonna be good. All right, so So that happens. Then David pretty much just assumes kingship at that point. It just works itself out.
Yeah, all the elders of all the different tribes of Israel go to David, and they basically make him king.
They're like, okay,
overall.
yeah, there's not really at that point. Like, what are you gonna do? Pick some random person or somebody who obviously has tons of history with the people.
Correct. And at this point, the house of Saul is pretty much all dead.
Minus one person who we'll talk about later.
Which we'll talk about later. That's why I said almost all dead.
Yes. So after all that happens, he becomes king, and then that's it. We'll lead right into that. So David then says, "Is there anybody left? Anybody that I can at least show some honor and respect to?" Once again, going back
for
into
Jonathan's sake.
Yeah, for Jonathan's sake specifically, and they found his son, Mephibosheth.
It's all you.
No, these names I'm just not going to get over. Ishbosheth and Mephibosheth. At what point do you be like, you know what, guys, we're going. These are some real tough names. How about Bob? How's that? Like, no, you never get that. Why? I don't know. Anyways, so he took in his son, who was Jonathan's son, who was lame, and gave him back all the property that his father owned, Jonathan owned, which from description sounds like a decent amount of land. And he said, here, you know what? This is all you. And now I want you, and now mind you, he does not have usage of both of his legs. And he goes, you're going to be sitting at my table from now on. That was like a huge honor. At the same token, though, I would think Mephibosheth would be like a little scared too, like, because knowing who his grandfather was and how he was, you would have to think like he would have to. Oh no!
Yeah, but you also got to realize that it's also his father who was,
Yeah, but his father was Mr. Happy. Everything in the world is great.
But also David's best friend.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things like you could be so overwhelmed with joy, or be like, this is cool, but this could go bad really quick.
I feel like if it was going to go bad, it would have gone bad in the beginning.
Yeah, we're just like teasing him, but I don't. But that was obviously not him.
Yeah, so I don't. I'm not subscribing to your theory on.
I don't know. It's like, I guess I've watched too many like movies with betrayal and stuff, because it's always like looming.
It's not Game of Thrones.
True. No dragons. Well, unless you want to consider the Leviathan, but that's a whole nother one. Anyway, so he let him, and so that's once again another example of his love and loyalty to Jonathan, to
the House of
Saul in general, as just he's just a decent human being. It's like this a one in a million, which is why once again he was called a man after God's own heart. And then the man after God's own heart, dun dun dun, really messed up. So, if you know the story of David and Bathsheba, it's a spicy one. So David he here's the big one. The men went out to war. He was always a warrior. He was always in the front lines. He was always right there. But this one, he goes, I'm sitting this one out. That was the first mistake, because he wasn't really being, at that point, because he wasn't being loyal, I guess you could say, to his military. He was always the one there, and that was his job, to be there for morale, or all that. He sat it out. So he could have avoided a giant situation if he would have just not been there and done what he should have been doing in the first place, because God told him to go conquer, not just said, hey, send your army to go conquer. He said, you go. So while he's at home frolicking about, he goes upstairs and goes, I want to go out in the terrace outside. It's a beautiful night or day. I don't know if it was night or day. It doesn't really say. But either way, he goes out and he sees some hot woman taking a bath on the roof. Yeah.
Goes down right from there.
Yeah. So we've all heard of #MeToo. Well, this is the Me Too moment of the Bible. There's more than that, but one of. So this happened. He then goes, I want that. So when he goes, I want that, it's not just like, if you see something that you want, there's going to be barriers to entry.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to like, okay, I want this. Well, you can't get it because of X, Y, or Z. What barriers to entry did he have? Absolutely nothing besides his conscience. And let's be honest, humans and our consciences were not the greatest with that. We fail quite often because, like, I remember when I was teaching Sunday school, I said, okay, how many of you guys have ever said, I'm sorry to God for something? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you guys did it again? Raise your hand. And if you didn't raise your hand again, you're lying. So
I didn't raise my hand. Shoot. Oh, come on.
So the point being that we mess up with our loyalty to God and our honor for ourselves. We do it all the time. We're not good with that. To somebody else, I don't know why. Why is it that it's easier for us to be loyal. It's easier for us to be more strict when it deals with someone else. But whenever it comes to ourselves, it's so easy to get lax.
The mind excuses what the heart chooses.
Elaborate.
Your mind will make excuses for what your heart chooses.
But why do we do that though? When we're okay with it, we're okay with
because I want
time. But like but that's the other, and we also
I deserve this.
But we also do it if somebody else is around. We'll put that check and balance in ourselves because we're like, okay, no. I don't want them to think something, think X, Y, or Z of me. So then we're gonna be okay with it. We're okay with saying no. Then it's not really even that big of a fight. Sometimes it's not even like a conscious decision of that. It's more of, somebody's there, so subconsciously, the little blocks fell in place, and okay, you're okay with saying no. But remove that one thing from it. Now it just you just hyper focus in.
Lack of integrity.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it is.
But I thought he was a man after God's own heart.
Just because he's a man after God's own heart does not necessarily mean he's a man of integrity. Or he had a lapse in
There you go.
integrity.
I think it's more of a lapse because his integrity was pretty impeccable until
now.
Yeah.
That we know of.
We had the one pride moment that he had before.
Yep.
But according to, now not agreeing with it, but according to their customs at the time and how they dealt with honor and things like that, he was like in their law not agreeing with it. He was somewhat justified in his going after was Nabal's household. Yep. He was still technically within his rights.
Correct.
So even though it was pride, it was still legal. This, on the other hand, no.
I wouldn't necessarily say legal because they didn't really have that many laws back then, but
culturally acceptable.
There you go. I like that.
So this point now, this is not culturally acceptable. He has no right to this. He goes way over the top because then he calls the woman and says, I see, I want, come on over.
I have.
Yep, he had zero barriers to entry. He called her right over. That was it. And then while his soldiers are at war, finds out, oh, she's pregnant. So we're talking about a month or so here. So he finds out she's pregnant. That's when he goes into panic mode, as we all do. As a child, if you mess something up, best example. Your mom told you to turn the TV off. You go to turn. You're like going real slow because you want to make sure you finish the end of the episode. Almost. I'm still getting there. 5 minutes later, I'm almost there. Then once you come to the steps, you start fumbling with the remote. And you're like, you drop it over and then try and turn it off real quick. Why? Because you went into panic mode because you realize, I was about to get caught. David went into panic mode. He said, oh no, I'm about to get caught. What do I do? Well, I'm not going to lie. The plan was brilliant. If it would have worked.
Apparently Uriah, Bathsheba's husband at the time,
was just as loyal as David was previously.
Yeah, had more integrity in.
So it's amazing. So he goes in and he calls Uriah. He was a Hittite. Now I find it interesting that he's a Hittite because they were a nation that was defeated by Israel. They still had their heritage, but the Hittites were a defeated nation. Now this is somebody who is from a defeated nation, living in Israel, assuming the way it reads, he is following God's law at the time, which would be the Torah. And then he goes, no, I'm not gonna. He goes, I have to be loyal to my troops. I got to do this. So once again, this is somebody who is culturally not with him, but spiritually he's right there. He goes, I'm not going to dishonor God. I'm not going to dishonor my men. He goes, I'm going to sleep outside after he had a little meeting with David. He called him in just to ask him, like, oh, how's the war going? Give me a report. Hey, you should go home to your wife. I hear she misses you. So he goes, instead of going home to his wife, he goes, it's not fair, essentially, that my men get to be, that are out there on the battlefield and I'm here with my wife. I'm going to go sleep outside.
Sleep outside with the master servants.
With the servants. That's nuts. So he's outside sleeping on the ground, and then David is probably standing up there looking down like, oh no, what am I going to do? What's going on? Oh, what do I do? And he's going back into panic mode. So then he's like, okay, I got the perfect plan now. I'm getting him drunk.
Surely getting him drunk will make him go home and sleep with his wife.
You would think it could have worked, and once again, that's one of those things that like it you would think it would work because like a lot of times if you're going to be inebriated, your moral bounds are looser because you're not thinking clearly. So it's his reasoning. So he's going
flawed, but I understand it.
Yes, it's flawed, definitely flawed. So that's what he's going for. So then he gets them all messed up. But he doesn't sleep out with the servants this time. He sleeps in front of his own house and doesn't go inside. It's just bad. It never happened at this point. It was like, I'm so screwed. There's no coming back from this.
How do I get rid of this problem?
But now this is where it takes a Game of Thrones turn. It gets dark. He sends the guy who he slept with his wife, got her pregnant. He sends the letter in his hand to take to the commander of the army. Now, obviously, these things are sealed, so he didn't know what was in it. He goes, okay, put him in the front, have your other men draw back, and make sure he gets killed. It happened. And then David goes, okay, whew, problem solved. Man, all right. Bring her over. She's going to be another wife.
Well, Bathsheba mourns after the period of mourning.
Which does it? I'm sure there's some biblical talk about how long that is.
I don't know. I didn't see anything. Not necessarily in this chapter.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something culturally with that.
Yeah.
But let's throw a random number now saying exactly. Let's say like, okay, you had your week to cry. My turn. And he calls her in. Now, mind you, this is his first. This is I think this is his fourth wife at this point in time.
There might have been more.
Oh, no, there was more later also. So, yeah. But there's, very, very good point to think of. Many problems would be solved if it wasn't for men's libidos. Like, here's the one I love to talk about. Have you ever read any of the Greek mythology? Literally, just about every problem eventually stems from Zeus.
This is actually his eighth.
Eighth at this point.
Oh,
jeez. Wow.
And just to kind of close a loop, he got Mikhail back from...
Oh, yeah. That was that's a whole nother story, though.
That is a different story, but he did get his first wife that he...
But then she was also never happy with him and hated him afterwards, so it's really wasn't worth it.
When you see your husband dancing half naked,
I think that was the straw. Once again, I think that was another straw that broke the camel's back because she was with somebody for years that she was married to, and then. Correct. As she's leaving, as she gets taken away from her husband, the husband's walking behind mourning. that shows some loyalty from the husband's perspective. So I'm assuming that he was treating her very nicely. So obviously there's something there.
Something, yeah.
So for her to just go, okay, and then switch over to David, like, okay, hey, I'm back with you now. I think there was an underlying like tension at that point. Like, there's probably even anger of like, why didn't you come for me sooner type deal? Because this wasn't directly after, Ishbosheth died. This was like, keeps going into the future that this happened. So this was not an instant like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It took a little time. So I don't think that this was necessarily just his dancing in the streets.
No, but that's when we first hear of tension.
Yeah, and then, but anyways, so, bunny trail on that one. But
and not to mention he's taken other wives at this point.
Yes, once again, Greek mythology, everything stems from Zeus, just looking and lusting. That's what all the Greek mythology problems come from if you break them down. It is hilarious.
By the time she got back to him, he had taken 6 other wives.
Yeah, there's going to be no jealousy there because that was his first wife, and no jealousy issues. None.
So.
And it's only wives. They also had concubines back then, which were pretty much just women for the master, the king, to sleep with.
Yep, for pleasure.
Yeah, there was really no other purpose behind that. So...
Well, also to help take care of the house.
Yeah, sure.
Now that there's...
Yeah, I know, but that with the real purpose... They weren't picked for their cleaning skills. That was like, I hope you're good at this, but you have a main job.
This is your secondary job is to clean the house.
Yeah.
Your primary job is to pleasure.
Yes. So that was not a... So his issues started a lot with women. If he would have just calmed himself down, he would have been fine. But no, wasn't satisfied. Which then getting into his son later, he went way down that rabbit hole. But separate story. So the woman comes to his house. Bathsheba is now living with him. She is now his wife. And then no one knows what happened. He kept it all hush-hush, besides I'm sure some servants knew about it. Beyond that, everything was hush-hush. There was no rumors in the kingdom. All good. To our knowledge. Then Nathaniel the prophet comes in and goes, okay, I got a story for you. So there was a rich guy and a poor guy. Poor guy only had one animal. Rich guy had tons. Rich guy was throwing a party. He goes, I don't want to kill any of my animals because they make me money. Go steal his. Go steal the poor guy's. And then David was enraged. He goes, how dare anyone do this? How dare they?
He should have to pay
3 times over.
4 times over.
So he was very upset. And then Nathaniel had like the mic drop. He goes, that's you, by the way. Boom.
Boom.
Just drops it down. At that point, David goes, yeah, I messed up. He owned up to it.
He did.
So that's the beginning of, once again, him coming back into his character. But it's also funny because it goes right back to his authority respect thing, because a prophet was somebody to be respected. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
But like, I mean, let's also be real. If you did something bad, and a prophet comes up to you and says, "Hey, I know what you did last summer," you're like, "Yeah, I did it."
Or you can be like every politician now. Nope, never happened. No, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't recall.
Well, that's public statements.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Sure.
What was it? I got a Family Guy reference. I'm sorry, my fellow Americans. I am not entirely truthful with you. I did googly that girl, and I am sorry. So, yeah, there was never the like fighting back and going, nope, this wasn't me, or Shaggy, it wasn't me. She caught me in the bathroom naked. Nope, that wasn't what he did. He owned up to it, but then Nathaniel goes, there's going to be some consequences for this. One of the consequences was the child that was born wouldn't survive. Ethical question time. coming from me, extremely pro-life, saying, okay, God, I get what you're doing here. Did you have to take the kid? What's your thoughts?
The children should not pay for the sins of the father.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I struggle with that, and I mean, the baby was born, and then 7 days later, after Nathaniel says, "You got consequences," baby's struck down. Is what they refer to.
Mm-hmm. And says got sick and struck down with a sickness and then died. Doesn't give it this exact time frame of how long he was sick for, but yeah.
Correct. Actually, I think it was 7 days that he was.
That was
sick
another
for.
7 days. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, and then on the seventh day, the baby died, and all of his servants were afraid to tell him that his baby died
because the whole time he was on the floor repenting and like saying like, Lord, like
fasting, not eating with anyone.
He was just saying
technically what fasting is.
Yeah. So then the servants go to him. We're going to circle back to the ethical question, but then the servants go to him and say, okay, they were whispering. He goes, the kid's dead, isn't he? Pretty much. They're like, yep. He goes, okay, washes up and then goes to eat. And they're like, you were just freaking out for how long? Why are you okay now after the baby's dead? Like, think it'll be worse. He goes, I can't change it, essentially is what he said. I can't change it. I was praying, saying, Lord, if you can.
He was basically pleading to God, say, please don't let this baby die. And
then afterwards, he's just, I don't know if it's like him owning up to it or more him in shock. I don't know. But the back to the ethical question of it, this goes back to a very literal statement. The wages for sin is death, but the gift of God, but the gift of God is eternal life through Christ Jesus our Lord. Is it Romans 3:23, if I'm thinking correctly? But the point being, when it says the wages for sin is death, we now think of spiritual death, hell, and all that. It was physical and spiritual back in the day. That is why Christ had to die. And there's the ethical question of it. And you're right. Son shouldn't have to get punished for the father's sins. But that's literally what it was. You had, everyone had to pay.
Yeah.
When Jesus healed...
They were still in the sacrifice system.
Yep. And a sacrifice wasn't even like a forgiveness. It was like a temporary covering.
This is also very true.
Yeah, so it's almost like you wash the outside of a bowl, but the inside still has moldy cheese in it. You keep washing the outside, but the inside's still dirty. Only Jesus can clean us inside and out. That's a big takeaway from that. But the sins of the father were so ingrained that no matter what, we had to pay for it. And I don't know how to reconcile that. Well, as a child, yes, here's a crazy one. In the beginning, back when Saul was king, the first thing that got messed up was Saul didn't kill enough. So you want something to make you go, what? Saul was told to take out the entire town. This goes down to men, women, and children. If there's babies. How bad does that have to mess with you?
Yeah, I mean, you also got to understand, though, it's a completely different culture back then.
Oh, I totally get that. But culture aside, human beings are still human, and we get messed up. You have people who go into the joy of and seditious people and seeing people hurt and they enjoy that. I don't think that's what Saul in the beginning was, because he spared people. It doesn't seem like he wanted to go all the way through with that. And I think his thinking of mercy was actually, number one, his undoing, but it was actually not even mercy. Here's an explanation of why. Which is mercy? God allowing, not causing. So this is getting deep into the philosophical questions here. God allowing, not causing, like a child back then to die. Now, a child is innocent. They do not have a choice yet. They don't have the comprehension yet. There's none of that. The Bible pretty much lays it out there. If you can't make a choice, you're going with God. You cannot not choose him because you don't have the capability of that choice. So them getting taken out was almost mercy. Because they never had to grow up and like, let's say like they grew up in a culture where they're in like foreign gods and all that, and they were going to go down that route because that's all they had. That's what they were given. That's all they knew. So God knew what they would have done and cut it off early so that he could keep them with him. So is that mercy or is that something sinister?
Yeah, you're going into a completely different, I don't know, not necessarily different, deeper level. I think we could even cover in this episode. But because then you're going into, predestination of,
Well, that's not even predestination. So,
it touches base on it.
Okay, so for me, I think
for God to, know what was going to happen, just to cut it off. So then why doesn't God, just cut it off for everyone,
because that's to me that's more simple because they're innocent, they're a child yet.
Correct.
As an adult, predestination, a lot of people get to that argument of predestination. It's if God knows what you're going to do, that's not him predestining you to do it. He just knows what you're going to do ahead of what you do. Now, his choices of how he interacts with what you're going to do is a whole nother thing. And that's the part we're never going to understand because God's ways are not our ways. So the thought of predestination is a pretty simple, for me, it's open and shut. Like, no, he just knows, like, I know if I leave candy on the counter, I know for a darn well fact my kid's going to go after it. Why? Because he's a kid. That's what he does. And I don't even have the foresight of God to actually physically be able to see what he's going to do. God can literally see all the different futures. We have none of that capability, and I'm smart enough to know that, so I know I have to move the candy. Now, did I just predestine my kid to not have that? No, I just removed a choice from the equation. That's not predestination. He can still go and find the candy if he wants to, but I just removed a part of the equation.
Not taking it. What are your guys' thoughts? Let us know in the comments below.
All right, so this happened with David's son, and then he mourned beforehand and then moved on afterwards. Now, next we have another ugly story, and this is actually, seems like it's a direct result of another David issue.
Before we get into that one,
yes,
I do want to say Bathsheba and David had another son right afterwards.
Solomon, the next king of Israel.
Thought that was very interesting, and God found favor in Solomon.
Exactly. I think we touched on it last week. We talked, God uses the most unlikely of things. First off, he chooses the hooker from Jericho to be married to someone in Israel. Keep going with all the greats till you eventually get to David. Then David murders a guy, steals his wife, all kinds of messed up. Then, her son, that's going to be the next one in line. And then keep going to Christ.
I also want to point out, going back to the Michal story, after she basically didn't like David because of his undignified worship, she no longer had any kids.
Was she cursed with no kids?
Yeah.
Afterwards. It was a curse. Okay.
Yeah. It was
I don't remember if it was just like one of those things that happened or. Okay.
No. Basically, she no longer couldn't have any more kids.
Which for them back then was like a great shame.
Correct. Sorry to go back on that, but I felt like it kind of like wrapped some things up with the next king, because normally it's the firstborn son
of the first wife. Yeah.
Of the first wife.
Now
we're on the eighth wife,
And it was not even close to the firstborn.
Correct.
So yeah.
I just, I want to kind of, close all that up
Once
for
again,
you before we get into...
God does not give a flying hoot about any of our traditions. He goes, I'm going to choose who I want to choose, and that's that. So next we get into another ugly story that is part of David's life. His son Abner, and Abner and his sister Tamar.
Well, Tamar was Absalom's sister. So I'm assuming...
Absalom. I don't know why I said Abner.
Yeah,
Absalom,
so
yes.
Absalom and Tamar were brother and sister, but I'm assuming Amon was part of...
No, he was another from one of the other wives.
Why, from the other wives.
Yeah,
so,
I don't remember which one it was.
Half siblings.
Yeah, they were all half siblings. Now, it wasn't incredibly uncommon for like a half sibling to marry, as gross as it is, but it wasn't incredibly uncommon. It wasn't like there was, for a cousin, it was much more acceptable, but like a half sister was definitely like, all right, whatever. But yeah. So David's one son goes, I want my sister-in-law. And it pretty much, it describes David in the moment of lust. In that moment of lust, he saw he wanted, and that's all he could get. He could not get it out of his mind. The exact same there. He saw his sister. It's all he wanted, and to the point where he, YouTube friendly terms, he took advantage of her forcefully. There we go. That's skirting around it, which was completely wrong. And if anyone has ever been through anything like that, I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's so wrong. So
our heart goes out to you.
Yes. So that happened, and then even worse than that, then afterwards had his, like, it was obviously like it says like he loved her, but like it obviously wasn't love. We know what love is. Reference our episode, What is God? Talks about love. So, or who is God, I should say. But it obviously wasn't love. It wasn't real love anyways. Then as soon as he's done, then he hates her with like a passion.
More than he loved her.
Yeah, so the amount of like lust that he had is doubled in the opposite direction in hate. It's crazy. They switched to that.
To the point where he basically throws her out. She says, no, this will be even worse than what you just did to me.
At least you can like take me as your wife or something just to make you like look better.
Correct. And then she actually offered to be his wife. He just had to ask the king,
Yeah.
Before all that happened.
Then David, her brother, David's son Abner finds. Why do I keep saying Abner? I don't know.
I do not know. Absalom
finds out. He wasn't happy, but then he was another smart one. He played it down for a while. He didn't say nothing about it. David found out. David was mad, but that was the thing. Here's another one. David's mess ups. Doesn't sound like he did much. Like he was like enraged about it, but there was no like you're banished or anything. There was just like, how dare you? There wasn't much that happened.
Yeah.
So that was a parenting fail.
Well, you also got to realize
David.
Amnon was his oldest son.
Yeah, but you still messed up. Like there's no.
I understand. yeah, but I'm just letting you know, like you're gonna banish your oldest son.
Well, he did to his other son, but anyways, so
we'll get to that.
Yeah. So then, pretty much, I was about to say Abner again. Absalom figures out a way to get him alone. Takes him out then. David is crying, brokenhearted, freaking out because his son died. Like, this is the loyalty to a fault portion of it. He loved everybody so much, but then he didn't do what was good for them a lot of times. You ever seen a parent who loves their kid so much and the kid is an absolute brat? That's because they want good for them, but they're not willing to actually do the hard job and, no, you can't do that. Like,
Actually discipline.
yep, they're not willing
Force
to do
them
that.
to do what the right thing is to do.
Yeah. They're not willing to do that at all. And then the kids turn out horrible. Well, now you have the first fail of there's no punishment, there's no nothing. I even wonder if Absalom would have done what he did if there would have been something done about him.
The world will never know.
Yeah, it's just one of those I wonder. So then now David banishes Absalom from the kingdom. He goes, "Okay, I'm never going to see you again." Eventually they get back together. Now, look at this from Absalom's perspective. You did nothing to help the situation. Then I take care of it because you wouldn't. And now you send me away? And now you call me back because you feel bad? Where were you, Dad? What's this? And I can completely understand his anger, his animosity, all that. I get it. Because there's going to be a lot going on in there. Because that's definitely a feeling of abandonment right there, without a doubt.
Yeah.
So that happens. And then eventually he goes, "You know what? I'm going to be king. Forget you, Dad." He said, "I'm going to be king." He started playing the people. He started playing the politician. In front of it, he would go out and be like, "Oh, if only I were in charge, I would be able to fix all of your ails." And then...
If only I was a judge, I could make all your wrongs right.
Yeah. And so then he turned the people for him, pretty much planned a coup. I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but he planned this little coup, declared himself king. David goes, "Oh, crap, I got to run." So he bolts out of the city. He could have stood and fought, but once again, he didn't want to fight his own son. So this goes, it's just, he created a lot of his own problems. He really did.
Yeah.
Then there's war between his son and him. Eventually, David's men win, but first he tells him, "Do not hurt my son." Now, we already know who Joab is because he took out his rival for taking out his brother. Joab is also fiercely loyal to David. He goes, "No, this ain't going to happen. I'm not going to let another issue come up because you're not willing to take care of it. Okay, I'll take care of it for you." Absalom accidentally got hung up in a tree because he had like real long hair when he was like running away. His hair got caught. And apparently he was like hanging by his hair and he was trying to like get down. He couldn't do it. So
Apparently he only cut his hair once a year.
Yeah.
And his hair weighed so much it was weighed 200 shekels to the royal standard. Don't ask me why I remember that. Don't ask me why.
So
I keep random information stuck in my head.
what was it? Thinking of Rain Man, like, and definitely 20 shekels. Definitely 20 shekels.
200 shekels.
Don't
That's
worry.
okay.
Yeah, proving my point. Anyway.
Example A.
So, as this happens, what could have happened is Joab could have been like, "Okay, cut him down, take him in as a prisoner." He goes, "No, because I know David. He's too kind-hearted. He's going to let him live, and this is going to be more of a problem." He stabbed him to death in the tree. Not once, but many times. And then they came back and told him,
If there's not a dead body, they're still alive.
No, they believed him. They believed him. And then after this happened, David starts weeping and crying and is, my son. Like, to the point where, like, these men came back from a victory that they're fighting for the king. They're like, "Yeah, we won for you. You won." Like, what did you want to happen at that point? And that's pretty much exactly what Joab came up to him and was like, "Dude, you are demoralizing your men. Look at what you're doing. You going to war. What did you think was going to happen?" We'll use a Star Wars reference. It's not going to end how you think. Like, what did you think was going to happen? None of this. He scolds him, and then David kind of like wakes up a little bit like, okay, I guess I gotta like
Guess I gotta be king now.
Yeah, so I can't wallow in self-pity forever. So then he goes back to Jerusalem. For the most part, afterwards, he has peace. There's stuff here and there, but finally, right before, as he's getting super old, another one of his sons goes, "Okay, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to take over. My dad's on his way out. I'm going to do it." As he's getting ready to do this, David finds out, and they anoint. And David had already chosen Solomon. He said, "No, you're next. I don't care what anybody says. You're next." They anoint him, and then there's another feud between two brothers, which doesn't end well either. So David anoints them, and then everything, for the most part, until David dies, is good. He dies in peace for the most part. And that ends the story of David. So, here's a question. Was David's life, like, great or terrible? This is the story of a great and terrible life. Like, what was it? Because you went from being a shepherd to being the king of Israel, to having all types of bad stuff happen between. Some of it was of his own, making. But I mean, and having to see sons die, having to see all this stuff, having to see knowing your best friend died, the guy who you called a father and who tried to kill you died. Like, this goes all around the crazy train.
Yeah, me personally, I would consider he had a great life.
That's
my take on it.
That's the optimist in you.
That's also true. I am optimistic by heart. So
I like. I think if you go moment by moment, yeah, because then he could overall. For me personally,
I mean, he's worldly known.
Oh yeah,
he's known for being a man after God's own heart. How many people get that title?
Yeah, and how many people have to watch their sons kill each other and have to know you
Most kings.
Yeah, but.
Comes with the territory, unfortunately.
Yes, but you see how much it pained him. Like, indifference, like...
Oh, for sure.
Like, that was like a huge... that had to leave a huge hole in his heart. I think he died, like, in peace, knowing that, like, Solomon was king, but I think he just still, like, had this whole, like, of wishing things could have been different.
Yeah.
So, overall, he did have a great life. A lot of terrible, though, too. So I think a good...
But you can't have a great life without terrible.
Yeah, unfortunately. Once we get to heaven, then we're good.
It's all about character development.
Yeah. I think a good takeaway from this is make sure that the decisions you make aren't going to negatively impact you later. Try to think ahead a little bit. Be a man or woman after God's own heart.
Be a man or woman of integrity.
Yep. Be loyal. Loyalty goes a long way because people know who you are and they'll trust you because they know who you are. So be loyal, have integrity, be a person after God's own heart. And it's going to be rough, but you have people who are going to be loyal to you, because even Joab, he was there the whole time. He was like, "Nope, I got you." He never left his side, was never unloyal to him. And yeah, he had a lot of integrity. Now, Joab's whole mistake with Abner went back to bite him later, because then Joab then died not prettily because of his blood feud. So, once again, make good decisions because they will come back to bite you. But see who your friends are, see who all the people are around you, and say, okay, is this what God wants me surrounded with? Is this who I need to be surrounded with? Am I making the right decisions? Be like David. Don't make mistakes like him. Try to take the positive, though. But we're all going to make mistakes because we're humans and we all suck. But that's why we need Jesus, because he is the one who makes it okay. Any final thoughts?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll see you guys next time. And that wraps up our series of David's great and terrible life. So, see ya.
See ya.